You probably noticed that we're kicking things up a notch here in 2021. We've got so many exciting things happening, from live events that will someday happen in real life, but virtual too, workshops where we join forces with some of our favorite experts, and our new 2021 40 Thrive Hive. This is something special we're doing for our Patreon supporters. There's a link in the show notes, but for $3 a month, you are invited to a live recording of 40 Thrive, where you can engage, ask questions, and learn a ton. We do them once a month at different times. And at the $10 level, you not only get to come to that live event, but we also have our monthly happy hour. This is where we will be featuring some community members, bringing in some guest speakers, and really providing you the opportunity to meet other women with whom you might have something in common. Go to 40thrive.com/episode 100 for all the details. Again, 40thrive.com/episode 100.
You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Thrive. Okay, it's the 100th episode. That's a little crazy. 100 episodes, experts, resources, kick-ass women with amazing stories. I'm so excited that you're with me and that you listen, and I just appreciate you. So today it's going to be a little bit different. If you're new to 40 Thrive or you're new to anything I've done, you may not know this, but before 40 Thrive even existed, I was co-host of a podcast called Broadscast. It was pop culture, current events, basically whatever the hell we wanted to talk about, but with that female spin. And I have invited my Broadscast co-host, Kim Goldman, to join me for the 100th episode as my guest co-host.
So are you trying to tell me that in all the episodes of 40 Thrive, you've never mentioned me or Broadcast?
Welcome, Kim.
Awesome. Hello.
Of course, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
But some of the listeners now may not be aware. So hi.
Hi.
We're a little back-asswards, but why would anything change?
Exactly. 100 episodes should not declare that we do things right starting now.
I will say you were on, I'll put the link in the show notes. You were on an episode in June of 2019.
Correct.
Yes.
When I had that little podcast I was doing.
When you had a little podcast that got millions of downloads.
8 million.
8 million, really?
8 million. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Confronting O.J. Simpson. I will also link to that in the show notes. So that is a really, really good podcast.
It was a really, really good it still is a really good podcast.
Yes, it is. If you haven't heard it, it's brand new.
Well, that's the interesting thing about podcasts is I guess they always feel brand new. I mean, unless you're doing like current news, I guess, but they're kind of evergreen.
Right.
So yeah, it was amazing. And I remember at the time when we were talking about it, how much I appreciated all the things that you taught me, even though at the time I dismissed it all. Well, I didn't need to know it because you were handling it, but all of those things that you instilled upon me at that time came back in spades. So I appreciate that. And so I took you with me on that journey. So thank you.
Fantastic. It was so good. And I think that you need to launch another podcast. So email Kim right now and tell her to launch another podcast. Like, come on. Make shit happen.
It's not just me. I got other people waiting to sign the checks, lady.
Yes, you do it the right way. I just go and you wait for people to provide.
I learned from you.
Sadly, I haven't. So
yeah.
Normally I'm a fan of talking with women who have gone through a transition, who maybe become an expert in transitions or even just share their stories. So I was like, oh, I could talk about transitions with Kim. And then I realized, okay, let's just break this down. So everyone obviously has dealt with a pandemic over the last year. But like in the last, I don't know, less than 2 years, you have reconnected with an old love. Mm-hmm. You've moved in together. Mm-hmm. You have a child who's in his senior year and ready to go off to college, your only child.
Yeah.
The nonprofit that you were the head of for 15 years has closed its doors. That's a lot of transition.
Okay, well, how much do you charge by the hour?
How are you doing?
It's been rough, honestly. I mean, I think we can all agree how hard the last year has been. I was just talking to someone before I drove over here that they resigned from their position as a coach at a fairly big college as a basketball coach after 30 years. And I was like, God, I think there's a lot of people that are sort of taking inventory on their life, whether forced or chosen because of what has gone on with the pandemic, between love and finances and jobs and, where you reside. I think that we're all just sort of in this self-reflection. If we choose to make it a positive, I think we can be in a self-reflective place. But I was feeling very victimized during that time because I felt like this was all happening to me and I was scared. I'm turning 50 this year, so I was turning 49 when that was all happening. And I remember you saying to me, this is a great opportunity for you to find yourself. But I was resentful because I was like, I don't want to do this at my age. Like I don't want to start over and find a new career path. And I still don't. And I have to, so that was rough. And so that kind of sent me into a tailspin. I mean, I think I had like low level depression, and I think I probably still do somewhere that I'm in denial about. I'm blaming my hormones, but I don't know. It was rough because I felt like, gosh, I had such purpose for such a long time. And I know I have purpose other places, but that was the one that paid my bills. And it also brought me a tremendous amount of stress. So I had to at some point realize that the joy that I got and the pride that I got sometimes was dwarfed by the stress and the burden that I also felt because it all rested on me for 15 years. Yeah. And that's a lot too. I'm much better now, although it's still daunting because I have storage units that I need to empty for the old organization, and I got to finish up the banking. There's nobody to do that. Mm-hmm. So I still lay awake at night thinking about what I have to do for a job that I don't work at anymore.
Right.
So
yeah, that's not stressful.
Yeah.
When you think about today, tomorrow, the future, there are opportunities. I mean, you do such incredible work, and there are organizations out there that are doing really important work. You're on the board of more than one, right?
Right now, I just focus on the National Center. I just became the co-chair, co-president, whatever you call it.
So you're still doing, obviously, a lot of advocacy. Is there part of you that's just like, I just want to do something totally for me that has no element of saving lives? And I mean, it's just going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of stress.
I don't know that I have to put myself back in that same situation where the stress is the way that it was, but to be in the nonprofit field where I keep finding myself gravitating towards, I can already feel the stress. Like I have an offer pending and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back to that. I don't know if I want to put myself back in doing something that I know I'm good at. I don't really know if I want to. And then I'm thinking how irresponsible of me to not take a job that I've been offered during a pandemic when there are very few job opportunities being offered. And I find myself in this cycle. I look online, I look for jobs, and I keep gravitating towards the same thing because for 15 years, that's all I've done.
Right.
So you drive me crazy when you're like, think of all the other things you could do. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And I'm like,
I'm
oh my
such
God,
a jerk.
You're such a jerk challenging me. But you gravitate towards what you know.
Right.
And what I know is not something that I love. And I don't love certain parts of the nonprofit world. Right. And anybody that, is in nonprofit land knows that there are elements of it that are fantastic, that motivate you and carry you. And then there are other parts that could nearly suffocate you. So it's a real balance. And so I'm now in that place. If I have a kid going off to college, like you mentioned, I have a partner that lives with me, which is great in terms of sharing finances. I'm not going to lie, but his job ended at the end of 2020. So we're both home.
Right.
Looking at each other in our new relationship all day long.
Well, if you haven't heard episode 99, which was the one that just went up before this one, I talk with someone who helps those of us who are sharing space.
Yeah.
She's definitely helpful because I get it. So I asked in the 40 Thrive community, this is a good segue here. What would you say is the most glaring example of something you've learned about yourself in the last year?
How to navigate Netflix, how to organize all my streaming sites.
Wait a second. I'm calling bullshit. You didn't know how to do it before.
No, I'm kidding. I learned to purge a lot because with my boyfriend moving in, I needed to make room. Yes. And he's like, it's okay. I'll just be in my little banker box over here in the corner. I'm like, no, babe, I'm going to make room for you. It's good. So
you're better than I. When Jeff first started sharing an office with me, I had him over in the corner facing the wall in this like little workstation. I can't even call it a desk.
Yeah.
Because I had the office feng shuied and I was like all into my space. And then now as you're sitting in my office, I've given him a big boy desk and considering he's
Same size desk, as yours.
he is the one with the quote unquote real job. So I had to throw him a bone.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I hold myself to a very high standard, but at a time where there was literally nothing, I had to learn how to just relax and chill out a little bit, which wasn't always easy because then all the little self-doubt and the thoughts would creep in. And that's why I can't meditate, because I don't have the ability to keep the thoughts out sometimes.
Meditation is not a lack of thoughts. It's just like pushing them out.
Yeah, the silence.
Sometimes
it's like a floodgate is open for me. And so
sometimes I talk about meditation on the show, and I'm like, oh, there are people who say, oh, quote, like I can't meditate, and it's always you that I'm referring to. If you go back, because you're like, it makes me angry.
It does. It makes me anxious. I know I'm doing it wrong.
So I asked in the 40 Thrive community, other people, what's one thing you learned about yourself through the challenges of the past year? Renee says she is far stronger than she ever thought she was, and that she can sit still. That's the one thing I think many of us learned. Marexa says she enjoys her own company and completely happy with staying home for extended periods, and she doesn't miss random human interactions.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that.
I totally agree. I learned that I was totally okay with not being around people.
Yeah.
And I learned that I'm actually fairly antisocial.
Well, I learned that, I've been working from home for a while now.
Yeah.
And then other people started basically living the life that I've been living.
Yeah.
And then they were expressing loneliness and feeling depressed and things like that. And I was like, okay, that's not just me. Like, I thought maybe there was something wrong with me and I was going through something, but I realized by all these other people saying, this doesn't feel right, this is abnormal, that it was actually basically because I'm so isolated.
Yeah.
I have Zoom calls, and I've always had Zoom calls, but when I coach and I work with people, it's not a give and take. It's me helping them.
Right.
Which I love what I do, but it wasn't like sitting back, having a drink or a cup of coffee or whatever with another person.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that everyone else has spoken up for me. Well, I
think, the other thing that's interesting, even though I was running the organization that I was at, I spent a lot of time at home because I didn't have to go, because we were field people, right? So my staff was always out in the field. So I would sit in the office by myself. So I was like, well, I'll have to stay home today. Being a single parent, I'd like to be around for my kid. And so Sam and I, my son, we were in the house a lot together usually. So that wasn't a huge change for me. But for whatever reason, the loneliness, despite the fact that I was doing what I was already doing, the loneliness started to creep in. And I think part of it is because I wasn't out in the world working with my staff, or going to the schools.
Yeah. Because you were working from home, but it wasn't solely at home.
I mean, I had a business that I had to be out and about.
Right.
But like those everyday little stressors that we take for granted when you're driving to your job, or, you have to take a phone call, or you're running from one, like that stimulates your brain. Right. And so then you're constantly juggling and like problem solving and managing and relating. And when I didn't have that anymore, I was going crazy in my head because I had nothing to stimulate my brain anymore.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the comments here are that these women are understanding that they can be alone, and that now they absolutely need alone time and quiet. And so I think that there's a level of that. I think maybe when things open up and we're getting super close, that there's sort of a balance of human connection, but also the ability to just be and exist.
Yeah.
Liz says she'll be happy to never drive again.
Well, it's funny. I have a lease on my car, and I'm like so thankful because I was borderline going over my lease. I'm like, oh, I've made up. I got lots of miles to spare. Yeah.
Right. Tora says she likes to read, love reading, and should do it more. And a year is a long time to live with 4 people with almost no breaks.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Sandra says entrepreneurship is for me. I loved working on my business, and now that I'm back at work full time, I'm ready to retire and go back to exclusively working on my own. And then Claire says she discovered marriage is not for me. This is not a dress rehearsal.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. Good for you. And then Denise says persistence. So there's a lot of really great stuff. You should head on over if you're not in the 40 Thrive Facebook community. I will link to that at 40thrive.com/episode 100. You should join us, get in on the conversation.
Did you answer that question?
What did I learn about myself? I didn't answer it in there.
Do you want to answer it here on your podcast?
Well, definitely the thing that like opened my eyes to the fact that what I was feeling was normal isolation feelings. So that was really good. I've discovered that I set up a life, at least work-wise, that is kind of foolproof or pandemic proof. teaching people how to podcast or working them through creative projects. This was a time where other people were like, oh, I've been putting that thing off for so long and now I have time.
Right.
And so business has been actually good for me.
Right.
That's nice.
Right.
Right. If I was still working in TV, I would have lost work and still been trying to, get back, or who knows what was going on. Even those who are back, it's very, very different. So I'm really, really grateful for the time. We've had a lot of family dinners, although I noticed I definitely have seasonal affective disorder. Is that what it's called?
Which one is that?
It's the one when it's too damn dark too much of the time. And it affects my mood, because when it's light out later, I like to cook. And have family dinners and open the windows, and my mood is extremely different. Maybe it was all the summer and fall meals I was making, but in the winter I was like, I don't know what's in the freezer.
I think I don't know who needs to know this, but today's Tuesday, and then like today's Wednesday, and don't forget to brush your teeth. Like, don't forget to take your pills. Like, it was very funny because I thought it blended together. And so being dark to light, like, I just feel like it's just been one long day. But I know, especially when it gets dark, it's as early as it is, I feel like it's so much later. I'm like, oh, crud, I forgot to make dinner. We'll just order. And so, I got into that cycle.
Right.
DoorDash became my friend for a while, because I don't want to go to the store. I don't want to deal with the mask. I don't want to deal with the going up and down the aisles the wrong way and get yelled at, and go down the right way and 6 feet apart, and then everyone's rushing. Like, I was not a fan of the grocery store because I thought people were mean. I thought people were anxious and stressed, whatever it was. I'm like, people are not nice. Like, there was like a crankiness out in the world. So
well, maybe people were taking their carts. Did I tell you this story?
No.
I was at Costco. Yeah. I wrote it in the group. Yeah. I was at Costco last week, and I got bananas. I asked the produce guy a question, and then I went on my merry way, and I went about 3 or 4 aisles, just filling up my cart with lots of different things. And then I was like, what the heck? This isn't my cart. Like, there were just items in there that were completely foreign to me.
Yeah.
And so I had to like backtrack my steps, and then I found my cart sitting there with the bananas that I had.
So you just left the other cart and took off with your bananas?
Well, I had to take the stuff though that I had added. So now I'm looking around and I'm taking my stuff out of the other person's cart and just getting them back in my cart really quickly. And then I was looking around so I could like pull up and be like, you're not losing your mind.
Yeah.
It's me.
I've done that. I've done that.
I did it. One thing I didn't mention in the group though, I did it twice that day.
Oh.
So the second time I just found myself like standing in front of a cart, like ready to push it. And it was an empty cart.
Yeah.
And I was like, thankfully it was empty, because I would have just kept pushing. And then I was like, oh, this isn't mine. I'm like, so maybe I was just in a space. But I've discovered that I really like, and obviously I love my family. I really like the people I live with. But I've also discovered that they can take me in small doses as far as being 3 teenage boys.
Yeah.
And so I really am looking forward to them getting out into the world.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that have always impressed me about you is your friendships with your girlfriends. So, and I am fortunate enough to count myself as one of them.
Yep.
I feel like I've like sucked as a friend over this. Like, I mean, granted, I went through 2 huge losses in the last year, or not even a year. Job stuff, having my husband here, the kids home. Like, I just feel like I have completely dropped the ball at continuing to connect. I asked in the group how important are friendships with your girlfriends and why not. And I'll get into some of those answers, but how do you do it? You're so good.
Well, it's funny you say that. I have a unique family background. I don't have any.
Unique.
I mean, I was raised with just my dad and my brother, so I don't have, my brother died. So I don't have other siblings except my step siblings, which I'm not super tight with, which that's a whole other show.
On the next 40 Thrive.
So my girlfriends have become my family. And when you like your family, it's really easy to nurture your relationships with your family. And I don't mean that as a dig to my family but it makes it really easy. And I, have a tribe of girls, women that have become my most endearing confidants. And I joke that you were the last one to make it in because I wasn't taking applications and I didn't have room, because I do believe that it takes a lot of love and compassion and patience and nurturing for the relationships that I want in my life, because I didn't have it growing up. I didn't have a mom. So the ladies in my life fill gaps for me, for the very long time, I didn't have a partner, I mean, I was a single parent for 15 years, so I didn't have people in my life to satisfy the needs. That's going to sound really weird, that I would have had from a male partner.
Right.
And so my girlfriends kind of became, my voice of reason sometimes. And they became the one that I would ask my text questions to or whatever it was, because I was by myself.
Right. Just for the record, my husband is not the person I would go and ask my text questions.
My friend Lisa, she's my smartest friend. No offense, Jackie. She's always the one that's so on top of that stuff. But during the pandemic, we got closer because we were all so bored. Honestly, we were all just looking, okay, I need someone other than my husband or my son or my daughter to talk to. And so we started chatting a lot more and texting a lot more. And then the Zoom cocktail parties were hilarious to me, but we really did try to increase our communication. But you retreat.
Yeah.
And I'm very similar to that. My friends have to knock on my door a lot for me to come out of my shell, but you're similar that you retreat when stuff is going on. So I'm not surprised that because of everything that was going on with you, you felt like you sucked at a friendship, but I never felt that. I just gave you the space that I know you needed. And then there are times where I'm like, God, am I being a good enough friend? And I would check in and you're always like, I'm good. Like, okay, I know that. I'm fine. I hate that word. But for me, I think
I'm like in a tub of Ben and Jerry's. Like, I'm good. Don't worry about me.
But my friendships, my girlfriends, a small number of them are the people I hold near and dear to me and, would walk through fire for and vice versa. And because I had such a lack of relationships growing up and with family and stuff, that's where I poured my energy.
Right.
And so,
but I've seen in other women who may not have had a female role model mother figure growing up, that often they struggle with female friendships, and you're the opposite.
And by design, I think I chose friends that are similar in that regard. I mean, Denise, my best friend, she connects much better with male people than, with female. Like, she grew up with brothers. Like, I think I sort of gravitate. I'm a lot more like a tomboy. I'm not very girly. Michelle and Lisa, my other two close friends, they're very girly. And so I was like, oh, what's that? I mean, I remember... and I'm going to embarrass her. I want to say which one it is. When we became friends, I used to work in television. I worked on the Larry Sanders Show, and my friend, I just outed her. We were all there together, and I remember we were out having cocktails, and she said something about having hair on her nipples. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was mortified because I was raised with boys. Like, we talk about hair on your nipples. I was in my 20s and I never talked about hair on my nipples. Like, what was wrong with me? I never had a mom, right? And my dad doesn't know that women have hair. Well, maybe he did, but not going to talk about it with his daughter. So I remember thinking, oh, this is what girls do. Like,
this is the stuff.
This is the stuff that girls talk about. Like, honestly, I didn't know how to wear a skirt until I was in college because I didn't know how to be feminine. Yeah. Like, there's little things that like I was intrigued by.
I relate to a lot of that. Yeah. I didn't grow up without a mother, but we didn't necessarily, like, I'm still waiting for the sex talk. I'm 50 almost. When it comes to, and it's funny because I get a lot of pitches for this show to talk about beauty and fashion and things like that. And it's not that I don't like the topics. I'm just not secure in them. Yeah. I don't feel like I can like rock a lipstick. Right. I'll go to an event, like you'd have a nonprofit event and I'd go to that and my shoes would be off by the time I got out of there. Like,
Jackie, literally, I walk in here and you handed me lube, right? And I was like, what? And then we crack a joke about it because I'm actually okay now talking about that. Whereas I never, because I didn't have women in my life. And what did you say to me? Well, you're almost 50. Don't you need it? Like the thought.
Don't you all want to come into my office where I give out lube?
But having those friendships does allow me to have those conversations because they're like sisters and we're all kind of going through and that's been so amazing because as much as I love Rhett, some things you just can't talk to with your spouse.
Lube,
Well, yeah, I do have a hubba, but I just mean some things you can't talk to with your male or female counterpart. Having someone that isn't that for you is liberating. And it doesn't mean I can't talk to him about it. It just means it's a different, it's like you go to your therapist. It's a different conversation you have with your therapist and you have with your girlfriends and you have with your spouse, male or female, whatever it is.
Right.
It's just different.
Well, I mean, when you talk about, let's just take the lube for a second. Like if I talk to my husband about lube, it's about like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's required, blah, blah, blah. Like it's very cut and dry. when you talk to your girlfriends about lube, there's an entertainment factor. There's like funny stories that go along with it.
And there's, I've tried this one, I've tried this one, I've tried this one, I've tried this one. This is the one that works best. If you have this, like, weren't you on the text chain where I sent you the picture from Target? It was that weird looking tampon. It was like a funnel or something. Didn't I send that to you?
I don't remember.
It stopped me on my tracks. And I was like, what is this? And you strap it on and it holds the blood. I'll have to send it to you, and you could do with it what you want. But it was like Handmaid's Tale. Like I walked into Target and I suddenly was in a scene from Handmaid's Tale, and Reg is walking by and he's like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, "No, this is fascinating," because he doesn't understand,
right?
You know. And I sent it off to you guys, and you were on it because you had a very interesting reaction.
Oh, I think I said something like, "I haven't needed one of those for 15 years."
So that's the thing, that like having close girlfriends, they get you, they know your history, they know your patterns, they call you out.
Yeah,
don't have to worry about getting into a fight. An argument that lasts 6 days, and we don't withhold sex from each other. And,
we always give the sex to each other. So Allison says her friendships with her girlfriends are sacred. The relationships with her family are also obviously important, but there's something special about the relationship I have with my village of girlfriends. Mara says she seems to have lost all relationship with girlfriends. She thought she was appropriately nurturing them, but I can be a lot, and they have moved on to greener pastures. It's all good. I'm okay with my acquaintances. Mara, if you're extra, be extra, because the right people appreciate the extra.
Yeah. We talked about this years and years ago.
I'm extra. We know this.
Yeah.
You just rolled your eyes.
I didn't. I closed them for a extended period. When my brother died, I lost a friendship that was close at the time. But it dawned on me that part of the reason that happened is because I wasn't pulling my weight, and my weight was more than what my friend was pulling, because when I pulled back, we couldn't hold it together. And so I really struggled with that, but I was like, I didn't realize how much it was draining me in that friendship, because I was doing a lot. And so when I couldn't do it, there was nothing left. And sometimes that happens. Like sometimes your relationships, they satisfy what they need to at the time. They serve their shelf life. And sometimes I
had to break up with someone. I had to break up with a friend years ago. Her very existence was just stressful for me, and it just was not gelling. You ever have one of those like one-sided where you're like, this isn't a very good friendship, and they think it's the best?
Yeah. My very dear friend, Vicky. I mean, we've talked about this. Our friendship was hard for a long time, and I pulled away because it was very hard, and I struggled immensely with that. And then she was dying, and I was like, wait, what am I doing? She's a woman, and she's a dear friend of mine. And like, I got my head out of my butt because I was like, okay, that was hard for a long time, but she needs me, and this is important to me. And I was able to repair that before she passed away. But at the time I was like, I couldn't do it all for both of us. And we talked about it. And it wasn't like I just was a jerk and ghosted her. I mean, it was just like, I needed to separate myself from my own sanity, because I wasn't being a very good friend, because I was resentful. I was bitter, and I wasn't being the authentic friend that I know I wanted to be. And so I needed to keep myself in check a little bit, because she didn't deserve that. It doesn't matter that she was going through, I couldn't at that time in my life. It was just too much. And that's, it's hard. It's hard to be honest about that, because I'm sure it's happened to me too.
And I think sometimes my challenge is sometimes they're not even asking for advice. I don't know if you've ever been in this, but I'm like, I have the answer. And so I provide the answer, and then they don't take it, and I lose my shit.
I'm getting better at saying, you're not asking for my advice, but I'm going to give it anyway. Which I really just need to say, would you like my advice? But the answer to that.
Like my friend Christine and I will go commiserate. If we know that we just want to vent, it's like, commiserate. Great. Got it. But I think the women I'm surrounded with are all very smart women that I actually appreciate advice, because I find as strong women, it's difficult to find people in my life who will go, hey, and call me out and say, what you're doing isn't cool, or what you're doing affects people. Like, I actually appreciate understanding that my behavior, whether it's outwardly or by retreating, the impact it has on other people.
Yeah. You know. And I think, again, if you choose people in your life that are your spirit animal, so to speak, or like that speak to you in that regard, it's easier, because you know it comes from a place of love. And anybody that would say anything to me, even if I don't want to hear it, I know it's because they care about me and they don't want to see me struggle or, you know, experience heartache if I don't need to, or whatever it might be. Right. And if you're open to it, it can be amazing. If you're closed off, it can be really offensive, you know? So you also then have to trust your relationships to know which doors open that day.
Right.
Like, you know, and sometimes I'll say, are you just wanting to vent, or are we having a dialogue here? Because I got lots to say, but I can also sit back and listen. Sometimes giving the other person in the room permission to do their part, you have to know yourself well enough to know what you need. And that's sometimes the hardest part in friendships, is to know what you need. And And sometimes your friends know that before you do.
Yeah. I feel like I surround myself, as do you, with women who I trust.
Yeah.
So if they were to say, hey, I've been through some things, especially with teenagers, and you are an expert in this area. And so it doesn't mean that you don't have challenges with your teenager,
Right.
but you have opened my eyes in certain circumstances. Hey, have you looked at it like this? Or could it possibly be like this? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's really good. Because you see, with the clients that you had worked with, like a variety of challenges. And sometimes I'm over the top. And sometimes I'm not over the top, but you still give me good advice.
So when I was working with my job, we did a board matrix, and that's to figure out who satisfies what on your board. So you check the box, like accounting, marketing, advocacy, whatever it is, so that you can figure out where the holes are. I sort of feel like I do that with my friends. Like I have like my friend matrix, because my core group of friends, they're all really different, but at their core are very similar to me in the sense that they're good humans, kindness, spiritual, all this really good stuff, like right at the heart of everybody, that is very similar. And I'm attracted to that. But their personalities, you guys are all the funniest people I know. But each of you are so different that I get to pull from each of you something a little bit different. And so I love that. Like I know when I need XYZ, I go to person A, and when I need P and Q, I go to person, it's interesting because
my P and Q.
Yeah. You're my P's, my Q's, and I think you probably know that with your friends and with your siblings, you know who to go to, like a resource, right? Or an expert. And so I appreciate that you're saying that, because I think if I'm honest about my friendships, I'm like, oh, this one's really good at this. This one's just going to validate what I say. This one's going to challenge me. This one's going to cry with me. This one's going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. And I love that.
That's not me.
All of you do that all the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes I need one more than the other, because I want all of my friends to do all of those things for me. But sometimes I know which one's going to give me the little extra.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say I'm the last one who got in, but when I think about like my birthday coming up and spending time with my girlfriends, or four of you, you are the newest one for me too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we did broadcast, it's 10-year anniversary. Yeah. Oh my God. So I think it was 2009 that we first met, and we became friends pretty quickly. So what, 12 years?
I remember
you're the newbie.
I remember
12
in
years.
Starbucks.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's in Stevenson Ranch.
Mm-hmm. That's where we met. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Someone introduced us.
Yes. We were both doing community stuff. I'm curious if you're listening now, and like, how old is your oldest friend? My oldest friend I've known since 7th grade. And there's something so rewarding, not only because she's awesome. Her name is Karen. And so she doesn't get offended. So that's one of the things, like the whole Karen memes and all that, like the mega Karen, like I send her any funny Karen memes and she's just LOL. She's not offended and upset because she doesn't call the manager or anything like that. But she also was there during all those teenage years.
Yeah.
Where she saw some things, when you go through something as a teenager or a child or whatever, and then like later on your memory and you start to wonder, like, did it really happen that way? Do I really have a right to have felt that way?
Right.
How did it really go down? And I can look at her and she's, oh no, that's how it went down. She validates it.
I have a girlfriend, Erica, who I've known since I was 6. And Erica, probably without her knowing, that relationship with her is so important to me, because she represents everything before my brother died. Because I don't have connection to my past. I don't have connection to memories in some way anymore, because I don't have anybody to talk about them anymore. But Erica, since she was there from the beginning, ish, and because we shared so much together, she helps me. Like, we help each other because she's the only child. And so it's interesting. And she has a best friend and they have their newer memories, but she and I serve as each other's like lockbox.
Isn't that awesome?
But that for me, because I don't have a connection, so I can appreciate what you're saying about Karen. That's Erica for me. She'll come up with things. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't remember that. And then she'll keep talking. I'm like, oh, I kind of remember. Thank you. And she, put another mark for me to fill in where the holes are gaping.
Right. Karen's one of those people who doesn't require, there's a certain element of I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like when my dad died, and here I am with my 12 siblings, we're all lined up at the wake, and they do that very traditional wake and funeral and all that. And she comes in and she gives me a hug and she's, oh, you've been here. I mean, it was a 4-hour thing. Mm-hmm. So you must be so thirsty. I brought you a bottle of water. And I'm like, oh, it's so thoughtful. And then I open the bottle of water and it's
really vodka.
It was. It was a mixed drink.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was clear.
Yeah.
And it was very stressful. And so she was just like, here's a little something to, like, and it's not about the alcohol. It's about the thought. That's who she is. You know, like the first anniversary of my dad's death, she went to the cemetery and put like Patriots flowers. It was Super Bowl weekend, and Patriots were in it the next year, as they do or did. And took a picture and sent it to me because I live 3,000 miles away. And so friendships are really important. And I'm so appreciative that the women in my life who I love so dearly have not held it against me. And that's the other thing too, is I don't drive. I used to drive wherever, and it was very easy to get on the phone.
Yeah.
When you're driving from here to Costco, that's basically it.
But sometimes the best friendships though, Jackie, they just need that every so often, like check in, and we can pick up right where we left off. Yeah. Even if we don't talk. And again, we're all texters, so we check in, but it's easy. My friend Lisa can pick up in the middle of a conversation that I had with her 6 months ago and not skip a beat. Like literally the sentence we left off, and she just continues right along. But I think that
she really is your smartest friend.
Lisa, she could do that. She's with superpower. But I think the friendships that don't need the daily check-ins and the daily, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's something really beautiful about being able to just pick up where you left off and feel like you haven't skipped a beat. And you give good phone. You give good talk. Our conversations, even if they're meant to be something easy and breezy, you bring your A game, even when you don't think you are. I've appreciated that with you, because when I'm on the phone with you, I'm talking with you, I know I'm the only thing that you're paying attention to. I mean, even though we can balance 50 other things, you're very focused. You pay very good attention. You have very good recall. And I love that I feel like I'm the most important thing on your mind in that moment. And that what you're offering to me is from your heart and your purest sense of you. So I appreciate that you think you're not a very good friend, but.
Well, thank you. And you know, it's funny because perception is everything. I think because I was going through so much that when I would get on the phone with a friend, I would just go, hey, what's up? And then I'm like, all right, I got to run. I got to pick up or do this or whatever, the meeting or whatever. And you're like, but I didn't even ask about you yet. And I'm like, yep, that's by design. Like, take care. Because it's so much easier when you're grieving and when you're going through stuff to dive into somebody else.
Right. So what you did in that conversation was give me the guilt of not being a very good friend by asking you how you're doing first. And saying, no, you first. You're the one struggling. So you just gave me all the glory.
Yeah. I have certain friends, if you're like, hey, how are you? And then they just go. There's no, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Like, have this going on. What about you? Like, no, it was just like, hey, how are you? Oh, okay. And so by the time they finish like whatever they're going through, then it's, I gotta go.
But that's something that I noticed about the pandemic is as soon as I did get in those moments, I'm like, because I was like, people, voices, they're not in my head. There's reciprocity here. But I think that sometimes that happened too, that, someone's actually interested, and it isn't, what did you put in your coffee this morning? Or what are you having for dinner in 7 hours? You know, like,
and your significant other is not necessarily like they're living it, so they don't need to hear about it. You know, so if you're going through something and they're like in the middle of it, we're not always in an open space to like, now let's discuss it ad nauseum. So that's why your girlfriends are so important.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's what Red will say. He goes, you were on the phone with Jackie for a really long time. Because is there anything you want to update me on? I'm like, no. And then I realized, oh my God, I don't even know if I had some of those conversations with him. And it's not because I don't want to or I don't trust him to. It's just girlfriends elicit different responses. It's different. It's just different. Yeah. Because I haven't been in a relationship in a really long time. I forgot that that's okay. And he's really good about go do your girl stuff. I don't want to get in the way, and not making me think that all of my attention has to be on him because we're new. I mean, he knows he's coming in and it's going to be hard for him to like break the barrier, and he doesn't want to, but I know he sort of, like, what's happening in there?
He looks like that guy from Home Improvement over the fence.
So,
just peeking. So I'm going to have you on episode 150.
Oh gosh.
You're going to come back and update all of the awesome things that you're doing. I think that's really important because there's so much. Sometimes options are scary. You go to a restaurant and you ever see those menus like Cheesecake Factory? Yeah. And you're like, there are 15 pages here. That to me is too much. Give me 2 sides. Yeah.
I think, and I appreciate that. I think that when we started all this, we talked about like the transition period. I think all of it is amazing. I think it's super scary. I'm going to have a kid out of the house soon. And, I know a lot of people are like, oh, empty nester, aren't you feeling lucky? I'm like, oh, I have nothing to nest though, so there's a little bit of pressure with that. And travel, where am I traveling? There's travel restrictions, but being excited for my kid, and I'm withholding purchasing stuff for college because I don't know what size bed. And like, I'm ready to start shopping, and, I can't wait for that next chapter, and I need to chill out and let my kid enjoy his time. And it's exciting. There's a real sense of accomplishments and pride that I get. Sam doesn't understand it. I'm like, let me have this. You need to let me have this. Like, I did this all by myself, and you need to let me have this moment. And he pauses because I think there are some moments where he's, Mom, you're so overwhelming. I'm like, you're going to miss me. You don't realize how tight we've been and how connected we've been and how much I've done for you he's like, well, you don't give me enough credit that I can do it myself. I'm like, all right, fair enough. There's a real, a moment where I was watching him on his college tour, and God, he's got this. Like, he really presented himself, and he was so poised, and I just kept crying at every step. I was holding it back because I was like, it's cool to watch your people out in the world. And my baby, my only one, my one and done.
And you guys have such a special relationship because even, again, 12 years of friendship, and he's 17. So he was 5.
Yeah.
You would throw these events, these nonprofit, the charity events and other things, and he would just be part of it. He'd be there. Meanwhile, I have, 3 kids at home, and I can't even imagine going to one of your events with my 3 kids necessarily because where are they and who's doing what and blah, 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 blah. But you guys had this all right, this is what we do together.
Right.
I would admire the ease that you had in the relationship. He's like, oh, what are we doing? Like, he was just such a chill kid who was just part of that.
Yeah.
And so you did do that on your own.
I did do that, yeah.
And, you've been with Rhett for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of child rearing on your own that you did. You know, and he's a great kid.
Yeah, he is. And I'm super excited for him. There's this weird part of me that's like, I'm super nervous about our relationship. And I don't know if I'm
terrified.
Parents
I'm
have
absolutely terrified that they will never call me again.
They will never. Yeah. And that's a joke between Sam and I that I have the Samsung and he has the iPhone. And so we don't ever FaceTime. And they're like, oh my God, is now the time that I'm going to get it so we can FaceTime? And I'm not. Don't worry, Rhett. I'm not going to get an iPhone. But I worry about that and I get scared. Like, I think we're close, but maybe we're not as close as I think. And maybe when he's off doing his thing, he's not going to think hey, I want to tell my mom about that. I mean, I keep myself up at night and then I wonder, gosh, am I the one carrying this relationship? I mean, all that stuff. And it's so weird. I have to keep reminding myself that I have always felt very strongly that I love that when kids are confident enough to leave home, you did a good job, mom, dad, guardian. Like that kid's ready to leave home. And so I have to be he corrected me that he didn't want to leave home. He wanted to go away for school. Right. And so I was very appreciative that he made that distinction for me. Yeah.
Because I have a, almost 17-year-old who's like, I can't wait to move out. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I appreciated the distinction. And I'm sorry that was said to you, but I also think that's a rite of passage when a kid is, I hate you. I got to get out of here. Well, like that's okay too.
And he's not that mean,
no, of course.
But at the same time, he doesn't have work and he doesn't seem to be motivated to get work. So,
well, and they don't understand what's going on out there. So it's really lovely
But my whole thing is like, oh yeah, you should totally go and get your own apartment. Like, when is he going to have the money? Like, he has to.
But I think that's the part where I look at my kid and for all the times where he's, how do I make macaroni and cheese? I'm like, really? Can't read the box, dude. Like, that I think I'm worried about him. Like, I have done too much. But there's also like this moment of thinking, he's going to be gone. He's going to have to fend for himself. And, when I was talking to the coaches at the school, I said, I want somebody to care about him as much as I do. I want someone to catch him, and I'm like, I realize how overbearing that sounds, but it's a big thing to turn your kid over to a whole other world. And thankfully, because of the environment he's in, I think that he'll have a couple of backups, but it's hard. I mean, and again, he's my only one. And so I don't get to do it differently with the next kid and make adjustments because I see how it panned out. And yes, I know every kid's different and I get all that, but holy crap, it's awesome. But I cry almost every day. Like I get very choked up very quickly. And so now I smother him and he's mom. I'm like, no, sorry. This is how this is going to go down till August. I'm sorry. I jump on him. I lay with, I don't know if you did this when your kids were young. I used to lay with Sam and listen to his heartbeat. And it was like, it was so nurturing, like when he was little and he didn't know. And it was so peaceful for me. And so I do that with him now. Sometimes like he's, what are you doing? He's a big dude. He's muscles and he's like a man. And I lay down in bed and I just cuddle up next to him and I nuzzle my under his armpit. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just want to get close to your heart.
And we'll leave it at that.
But like, it's weird. It's a weird thing. And thankfully he lets me do it. But
I had an old roommate when I first moved to LA, Al Lubell. He was a pretty successful comic. And he used to, I'm going to butcher it, but like he said something to the effect of like smother, like it actually has the word mother in it. Like it's not that father. So it's our job to smother.
Yeah. And we made a pact, Sam, as much as he might resist it a little bit. I said, this is how it's going to go down. I'm sorry. Like now I have a date that you're leaving. Like
I'll be sniffing you till August.
And it's the truth. And so I think that he is appreciative of it. I've given him a lot of freedom and a lot of leeway. And there's been a lot of moments of humor in our house. And he's very much my kid with his sense of humor and his and Red is hilarious because he's, God, are you guys alike? And I didn't realize how much. It's pretty wonderful, as painful as it is, pretty wonderful. But
well, you done good, girl.
I done good, lady. Thank you.
And then you can travel. I don't
Seriously,
know. It's always travel. People always say like, "Oh, I'd be traveling." I do love travel, but
you're going to be in that boat soon, and changes, and one by one, and then you're going to be left with Jeff. Just kidding. I love it.
Reunited. Yeah, but at the same time, kids come back. They stay home for a while after college, or they don't go to college, or they take a gap year. Like that's one of the things that I had mentioned in the group because you and I had talked about paying for college. And
I know, that was hilarious. We hung up and then the post went up.
No, I waited like 24 hours. So I was curious about the attitudes of whether they pay for college or whatever. And then I asked a follow-up question of like, if you're a parent, how important is it that your kid go to a 4-year college? And if you asked me when they were little, in my head, it was just like, yes, that's what you do. And then one day, my oldest, a couple of years ago, was like, wait, let me get this straight. I have to go to a 4-year college and I have to pay for it. And I was like, holy crap. My husband and I have been talking about this a lot lately. Like we have these beliefs or what we think are our beliefs. They're like in our core, they're in our DNA. And then we hear ourselves say them out loud and we're like, I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
It's just how I've been programmed. And I'm not saying that was necessarily my parents because I was the 11th kid, but the first to graduate from a 4-year college.
Yeah.
And so he brought that up. And then I realized trades, plumbing and electrical and all that stuff, like those are lacking right now. Those are great jobs that pay well. They're always in demand. And so my whole thing is if there's education after high school, explore, go find some things to do. Yeah. I feel that a 4-year college isn't necessarily.
It's not for everybody.
Right. And so I have 2 kids who are talking about going to a 4-year college. I have one who doesn't want to go at all.
Yeah.
We have a great local community college. Go try not some core classes, but some actual things that you might be interested in. Take a class.
Listen, I am a huge fan. I went to City College first, but when we started talking about college, I only pushed because he wanted to play basketball in college.
Yeah.
And so in the last year, he really questioned it, which was like gut wrenching for me because
you've given your entire
whole life to his basketball. And so I was like, I got to keep myself in check. But once he made the decision that that's what he wanted to do, then we needed to make that decision and that path for him. But I said, the second that you tell me you don't want to do it, I'm encouraging you to take a gap year. Like I'm encouraging you to just go on a road trip with your buddies, like any of your friends that aren't doing that, or go to a 2-year, go pick a city, like go explore. I don't think that any of us have to follow a certain path and that there's any rule for that. There's a societal rule that you're less than if you don't do it this way, but I don't subscribe to that. And I think Sam, he kicked in his decision-making process fairly quickly and decided he wanted to pursue basketball. And so that's the goal we went. But I was like, I'm totally cool if you don't want to do this, but you're not just going to stay home and have me continue to make macaroni and cheese for you, but you'll have responsibilities, but I'm fine if that's the path you want. No judgment. And they're supposed to find their way and they shouldn't know at 17 what the heck they want to do.
I always wanted to go to Emerson in Boston, which would have left me with $100,000 even back then in debt, probably.
Yeah.
But I always knew that I wanted to work in TV. And some of the most successful people that I worked with in television didn't finish college or, it wasn't something that was required in most of the roles there. It's funny how we change and we evolve. You may have thought that you wanted something when you turned 40. This was the next chapter. And then you live, you have a lot of experience. You can evolve, you can innovate. I'm not a big fan of reinvention because it sounds like starting over, but innovation, right? You're not going to start over in a new industry, but you may actually take those and shift into a new industry, pivot. That word is everywhere. Yeah. But I think it's really important to take everything that you've done for the last 17 plus years, 20 years, work, whatever, and just blow the lid off of that shit.
And I think if we have that mentality and hopefully instill that in our kids, that you don't have to just get in the hamster wheel, that there are different ways to satisfy things that you need in your life. There's different ways to earn a living, and there's different ways that you can get an education and feed that adventuresome side to you if that's who you are. There are other people that need a very regimented plan. When you have to know your kids and know the people in your life, but then also encourage them to step outside their comfort zone a little bit and see how that feels. And
and I give the same advice to women over 40.
Yeah.
Because we have to live by example. And so if there's something that you want to do, there's a risk you want to take or a shift you want to make, just do it. And then if you're doing it and it's not really working for you, make another shift. This all ends the same way for all of us. Now, when is a matter, who knows? No, but why are you wasting time? I feel like Gen X is stuck between the teachings that we got from the people around us who are like, figure out what you want to do and do it for 40 years and punch in and get a pension and blah, blah, blah. And now we're raising people who are innovative and like creating industries. I literally make a living doing something that didn't exist 15 years ago. So I could not have gone to college to become a podcast coach,
right?
Or to help people with their social media or whatever it is that I'm doing. Like, we have to be open and see the opportunities and shift at different areas of our life, you know,
and be brave enough to. I mean, I think that's where I get stuck.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not capable. I just get scared, and I own that. I know that. And then it's like peeling away the layers so that I can move through it. Fear is usually a motivator for me, but it's hard to make changes. Yeah. And for all those years that I was at the youth project that I wanted to leave, I was afraid because I had a mortgage to pay, I had a kid to raise. And I was like, where am I going to go? Where am I going to land? Now I don't the choice was made for me.
It had to happen.
It had to happen. But I recognized that my inability to do things at some point was out of fear. I wanted to move to Colorado years ago and I panicked. And so I've paid a lot of attention to why that is and acknowledge it with myself very quickly. I'm not disingenuous about it, but moving through it sometimes just takes me a little bit longer. I'm very quick to identify what the problem is, but figuring out how to fix it sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm here to say probably the most obvious thing I can possibly say. You have been through harder things than what's in front of you. You have made many, many, many more difficult decisions than what's in front of you. You have overcome, you have persevered, you have been extremely courageous. This doesn't even scratch the surface.
No, it doesn't, but I'm playing a different role this time. And that's something that I've learned to acknowledge that, I know I can handle anything. I'm not worried about that. I feel though, that all the other things that were going on in my life, I was kind of taking it as they were coming. I was bobbing and weaving and deflecting and processing and recovering and blah. This I'm creating.
Yeah. If you'd like me to punch you in the face while you're doing it so you can bob and weave and make quicker decisions.
But you know what I mean? Like I am, this is my path. This is my course.
But you don't need to see the whole path.
And I don't. And I've always been very good. Like I can't control the outcome, just the part I play in the process. I know all of that. But the difference between stuff that I've been dealing with and then this, I'm in a different position at the table. Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah. So just like you would tell a kid who's going to college, dabble in some things, try some things.
Yeah.
See what works. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
It was fun. It's like a little reunion.
I know.
Want to do this every week? I'm kidding.
Rhett cannot stop talking about us having a broadcast reunion more often than this.
I got to tell you, like, while I loved it, it was very difficult to constantly be opinionated.
I wonder how it would be for us now because we're different. Not that we're different people, but I think we're different.
I believe we are.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we vomited our opinion for 6 years on so many different topics. And I don't think I actually think the way I used to think.
Well, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your basic stuff. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Like sometimes I read old blog posts like on Huffington Post or whatever. And I'm like, what? That's really what I thought? Like, that's so weird.
Yeah. But it's awesome. You get to document your growth.
Yeah. And embarrass my children. All right. Kim Goldman, thank you.
Jackie McDougall, thank you.
Make sure that if you haven't already, you hit that follow, favorite, subscribe button and share this episode with a friend. You know the one. She just needs a little courage and inspiration. So send it to her. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Kokonu. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Kokonu.